Hello, and thank you for joining us for Fixin' It with Phil and Friends. Here are my friends here, Steve Atwater, Matt Boyer, and Eric Dalala. I think he's my friend.
Reluctant friends.
This is a picture of me taken from this last weekend here.
Gross exaggeration of the truth.
And watch the slow blink.
Exactly. We're talking about how to fix the Broncos' red zone problems on defense. The Broncos finished in total defense third in the league, but they finished 22nd in the amount of points given up. How do you explain this?
The guys got off to a decent start defensively. The whole team did for the first 3-4 games of the season. But some of the errors that we saw early on, we continue to see those late in the season. One of the big things that I saw that bothered me was that our two cornerbacks would many times bump into each other. Our slot corner and the outside corner would bump into each other when the receivers on the offensive side are running pick routes. And I saw it happen early in the season. We said, okay, hey, we'll forget about it. They'll get it squared away. But at the end of the season, it still happened. I saw it happen again in week 16, and that was very disturbing. They got to make sure that communication-wise, they're on the same page, and many times they weren't.
I think what happened before the defense put the Broncos in bad position. They were 32nd in the league. That's the worst in the league as far as starting position for the opposing offense. So they were a good 9 or 10 yards worse than every other team in the league when it came to those starting offenses. So the turnovers, we talked about it earlier in this series, the turnovers on special teams and the turnovers on offense put that Broncos defense in bad position. The defense itself was only allowing about 5 plays per drive per game. That's pretty good. That was I think top 5 in the league. So I think they did some good things, but what happened before those defensive series really put them in a lot of trouble.
Right, think about a play like against Cincinnati when the Broncos had the ball on Cincinnati's goal line. There's an interception in the end zone. They run it all the way back, and kind of a fumble helps the Broncos. But the defense then gives up a touchdown because they have the ball at the 1-yard line. So that something's kind of skewed it. I will say one thing is that the Broncos have never been particularly great in the red zone. Even in 2015 when they won the Super Bowl, they were only 16th in the league in terms of percentage of giving up touchdowns in the red zone. That slipped to 24th this year, but it's always been kind of an issue.
But back then, though, the offense played a little bit of a factor. Yeah, took care of the ball and everything.
But if you can even get back to average here, that would make a big step forward next season.
One of the positions that the Broncos defense always struggled with guarding, tight ends. Steve, how do you solve guarding a tight end?
As the season went on, we tried different things, and I think the solution that we came up with worked very well. Was Justin Simmons going man-to-man against their best tight end. And when he got a chance to do that, it worked out fine. But of course, Justin wound up getting hurt on a celebration. So, back to the drawing board. But when he's healthy, I feel really good about just lining him up man-to-man, taking him out of the game.
I mean, he's a guy that we probably expected a little bit of growth from, but he took a huge step forward this year, really proved that he could fill in for TJ Ward. He's that kind of rising star in the next generation of the Broncos secondary. And so if he can improve next year, you kind of add some more schematic twists in there, they could maybe solve that problem, I think. And again, Steve, you mentioned the offense. If they can go back to the point where the offense isn't putting them in positions where they have to take those risks, then you're in a situation where all of a sudden, now maybe you can buckle down a little bit in the red zone instead of having to go on an all-out blitz or something like that. You're able to play it a little bit more safe, shut these guys down.
Yeah, we saw a lot of offsides penalties too this year. Guys feeling like they needed to jump in and make a play. Steve, you mentioned the communication with some of those rub routes. That's surprising for a secondary that's really played together for a long time.
Well, really and truly, when it comes down to it, it falls on the players, because they have to know in that situation, regardless of what the coaches told you, that you can't line up on the same level because they have the possibility of running a pick route. So whenever they get in that situation, somebody has to come off, one guy stays up, and they're able to not get picked. So that's completely on the players, in my opinion.
Is that how you did when you were playing?
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, me and Steve were in the Broncos secondary. I don't know if you guys saw that, but yeah, no, but I absolutely agree with what Steve said. Now I'm picturing it in my head, and it's totally ridiculous. But I think that there's going to be injuries, right? There's going to be guys flowing in and out. So communication, as you mentioned, is going to be key, no matter who's back there in that secondary. But I think the Broncos right now have the pieces. We mentioned Simmons, Parks, Jamal Carter. Carter played extremely well at the end of the year, DeMonte Thomas. I think those are some of the guys that could factor in next year.
Yeah, it's a team sport, and like you were mentioning, not just on the defense, and it's the whole team coming together, and who knows what will happen in free agency and with the draft. The Broncos defense, I suppose, next year will not be giving up 44 touchdowns like they did in 2017. All right, that's going to do it for us. For Steve Atwater, Matt Boyer, and Eric Dalala, this has been Fixin' It with Phil and Friends.